but she said a bunch of deer had just flown over her head and stopped on the roof of our good neighbor Red. Well, I ran out to look, and the sight made me shudder. A freezer full of venison standing right on Red's gutter. Well, my hands were shaking as I grabbed my gun.
Hey, y'all. Well, it's that time of year again. The season is upon us. It is the holidays and Christmas time. And this week I thought I would do something a little bit different. This week's video, you can hear Marco dancing in the background, ignore him. This week's video is actually going to be something different. Number one, we're going to enjoy a lovely Norwegian main, not the full ration, just the main, of reindeer stew. And yes, being the redneck I am, I have had many a dreams of looking to my neighbor's house and seeing a bunch of deer dancing on the rooftop and thinking, wow, that would fill my freezer for the rest of the year. But we're not going to go into that. But we are going to try reindeer stew in honor of the season. You can talk about my morbid curiosity later. And we're going to enjoy that with one of the first energy drinks, which I have found in one of the local stores, Jolt Cola. Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s like I did, this and Mountain Dew was the game fuel that kept you going through the night. Many a gaming session was enjoyed, fueled by a lovely Jolt. So seeing this in the store brought back a lot of memories. I knew I had to pick one up. Not quite as I remember it, but then again, nothing these days are. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started, and then I'm going to get into the depth of what this video is actually going to be about. So, and ooh, hear that hiss. Now, this is another item I recently procured from MRE Zone. Again, if you need some rations, you know, I can vouch for them. I have dealt with them before, and I know they're going to take care of you, so give them a try. There's a few other places I have not tried yet. I do plan on, so that's in the future, and I'll let you know how those go as well. Alright, so these have a fill line, and you have to pardon me, I'm using my cant pot today, because I can take it directly from the stove with boiling water. You can see this does have a fill line right there. So, ooh, smells almost like bear jerky. Smells good. It's going to be a good meal. I've got my hand there. Yep, right at the fill line, and I could feel when the heat hit, so that was my indicator to stop. So let's seal this up. And now you can see perfectly the reindeer stew. Contains potato, reindeer meat, onion, carrot, cream, wheat flour, rapeseed oil, lingonberries, champignon, game bouillon, tomato paste, seasoning, and antioxidant. I did not think to see if there was an oxygen absorber. Silly, silly me. Well, I don't see one, and if there is, we'll find it later. So, all right, let's close that back up. We're going to give that a few minutes to work through. And pop our Jolt Cola. And while we're waiting on that, what I wanted to talk to you about, and the whole reasoning behind this video, is having a discussion with a friend of mine a few weeks ago. We were actually discussing storage food and things to put up for the upcoming winter, because it's January to February here in Georgia is when we get our bad storms. Not only snowstorms, but here the last few years has also been bad tornadoes with thunderstorms. And some of the worst storms I can remember have always been in January. January of '89, we had a lot of flooding in February of that year. People where I lived had driveways washing out from so much rain. And that was with 4 and 5 foot ditches on each side of the road. So it was an interesting time. Oh, the caffeine. And yeah, if you've never had Jolt Cola, I can't really show this to you now. All the sugar and twice the caffeine. It's hard to see there. But it also says 80 milligrams per serving, 160 milligrams per can of caffeine. So Mountain Dew comes in at 47 milligrams per serving. So kind of gives you an idea of the caffeine kick. But anyway, my buddy and I were discussing, storage food, keeping some stuff put up for if we do have a bad year. And I mean, it has came in handy before. It's always a good thing to have it a little bit put back just to be safe. I highly recommend, having a week or two worth of food and everything ready to go. But I did not realize, talking to him, how much information was lacking. And when I got done discussing some of the things with him and giving him some calculations and numbers, he straight out asked me, why aren't you putting this out to the world? This is stuff I don't find anywhere. Nobody ever talks about. And I figured, well, hey, I'm going to do a video tonight. I got to wait on my stew to rehydrate here, 8 to 10 minutes. So why not take a moment to discuss some of it? So that's what I'm going to do tonight. We're going to talk about some information about freeze-dried foods, dehydrated foods, and everything like that. And what I'm going to discuss is one of the most common things I see coming up is calculations of these items. Ooh, excuse me. Bubbles from the soda is working. I don't drink soda that much anymore, so this is a rare treat for me, and I can definitely tell the carbonation, so sorry about that. Alright, so one of the most common things I run into talking to people is they don't really understand the difference between dehydrated and freeze-dried. And it comes down to basic science. Dehydration is the use of air and temperature to remove moisture from food. Now, if anybody, beef jerky is the perfect example. Beef jerky is dehydrated meat, and what it does is it removes moisture and water from the food. Now, water is where bacteria lives. Removing water from food removes their ability to live, grow. No water means death. That's why two of the most common methods of preservation before refrigeration was salting and curing. Salting removes water from food and pretty much does almost a chemical type dehydration. If you've ever had salted meat or salted cod, anything like that, you know that it's very dry, it's very leathery, and it is very salty because the salt actually removes the water, draws the water out from the cells and replaces it with the sodium. So that high salt environment prevents the growth of bacteria, which preserves the food. If you've ever had country ham or prosciutto, that is salt curing. The main difference between the two, prosciutto is air dried, country ham is smoke dried. Smoking, another form. Smoking again goes back to the dehydration. It's the use of forced air, in this case smoke, and temperature, which can play into it depending on whether it was a hot smoke or a cold smoke, to remove the moisture from the meat. The bonus is you get that smoky flavor that's just so good in some of these meats. I mean, barbecue is such a popular food, and it is a hot smoked food which cooks and cures the meat by the use of temperature and smoke. Best barbecue is always done low and slow is the main term. And we actually have a barbecue competition guy that has a place right up the road here. And you know, he normally keeps his barbecue grills somewhere in the 200 to 250 range when he's smoking meat. He doesn't let it get hot. He wants a low, slow, steady heat. And that's what gets you the best barbecue. I can go into it a lot, but we don't have that much video time. If you want good examples of this, look up Alton Brown's TV show Good Eats. His barbecue episode does a real good explanation about the cooking of meat. His country ham episode does real good explaining the curing process and how it preserves the ham. And his salt episode goes into a lot more in depth. So it's a good resource. It gives you a scientific look at how some of this cooking works. So now, when I talk to people about this, two of the main misconceptions I run into, like I said, is the difference between dehydrated and freeze-dried. Again, dehydrated, forced air. You can do it with a $50 machine in your home. You know, and to be honest, I have actually made beef jerky and dehydrated stuff with my oven set on warm and the door slightly cracked to let the air move through. It will work. It takes about 12 to 14 hours, but it will dehydrate the food because it's a warm environment. But again, with dehydration, you're removing the moisture via air. Freeze drying requires machinery because what you are doing, you are actually dropping the temperature of the food to 0. And I'm not talking 0 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm talking absolute 0. Then you are using a vacuum extraction process to remove the moisture from that meat or from that product. So you're talking an actual scientific process using complicated machinery. And you can get freeze dryers for the home now. Harvest Right has freeze dryers that they sell starting at that $2,000 for a small. So if you're really that in-depth into freeze drying stuff, and some people have done it because of certain allergies that they have, certain issues they have with foods, you know, and that's another point my friend has brought up. You know, these people that have allergy issues, there's not really anything they can do because when you look at all of these freeze-dried and all of these foods, there's nothing really made for allergen sensitivity. I mean, some things you can avoid, such as, you know, gluten issues. They're starting to recognize that, which I'm not going to get into that. We're not going to get started on that subject. But for people with celiac disease, they now have some options. Seafood allergies has been a big one and something that they do take very good awareness of. Peanut allergies is a sneaky one. So, I mean, there are allergies out there people are concerned about. And there's not really much they can do. So for people like that, yeah, spending the $2,000 on a home freeze dryer if they're very serious about, you know, camping, hiking, things like that, being preparedness, you know, anything like that, that may be something they can do. Me, it's not my budget. I don't have a home freeze dryer and I don't see one anywhere in my future. So, but one of the things, like I say, that I discuss with people is dehydration, which this is a perfect example of a dehydrated food. It's shredded hash brown potatoes that have been dehydrated and packaged. And as you can see here, it's a 3-ounce package. The advice, pour a pouch of hash browns into a small bowl, add 1 cup or 8 ounces of boiling water, stir lightly with fork to moisten all hash browns, cover and let stand for 8 to 10 minutes. Yeah. And then drain off excess water. Almost the same exact information we see here. Nope. Let me pull that piece back out, sorry. Add water, wait 8 minutes, enjoy. In this case, add water, 8 minutes, and then cook like normal. It's a dehydrated food. Excuse me, gas again. And again, gluten-free, so you can see that, that has started appearing everywhere. But this is a dehydrated food, and this is 99% of what you're going to find in grocery stores. Unless you have a very, very unusual grocery store, the only freeze-dried items you're going to find in your local supermarket is coffee. Instant coffee. Because you cannot dehydrate coffee. Coffee, bouillon, everything like that, that is, it's a very unusual. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I apologize, folks. I got distracted slightly. Instant coffee is freeze-dried, and there's 2 different ways they do the freeze-drying of it, which is the normal freeze-drying method of, put it on a tray, put it in the freeze dryer, let it freeze dry, crumble it up, you're good to go. Or they do spray freeze drying. And anybody that's watched Steve 1989's video knows spray freeze drying is vastly superior to everything else. So, but this is the only freeze dried product you're going to run into in your grocery store. Except for now, we are starting to see some snack items coming out. And this freeze-dried mixed fruit was actually picked up at a local Dollar Tree. So this is starting to come on the market. We are starting to see a little bit more of it. And from what I understand, they have started having freeze-dried snacks in the baby food aisle. So that is something else you can look at. But one of the things I discussed with my buddy that he did not realize was how to calculate amounts on these items. And it goes back to basic ratios, and it's something I have not found on any website. After he said this, I went back and I looked, and nobody actually broke down and went into depth on the differences. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to talk to you about how to calculate freeze-dried quantities so you'll know what you're looking at. So this we're going to set to the side for right now. I'm going to revisit this in a minute because I do want to bring it back to the discussion. But this is a perfect example. And we're going to set the espresso to the side because it's a fun part. Copico brown coffee. It is a blend of sugar, cream, and coffee, just like the 3-in-1s from Nescafe and all of that. But if you can see right there, it recommends 150 milliliters of water for a 25-gram packet of coffee. That, based on basic calculations, is roughly a 6-to-1 ratio. And that's, I may be off. I will be honest, I'm not as familiar as metric as I am imperial, which is why we're also going to bring this into play. 88.88 ounces is how much this weighs. It is a blend of powdered milk, sugar, and coffee. Looking at the Cafe Bustelo, it is 2.6 grams, and it recommends 6 full ounces of hot water. So you're looking at about 8 times more water than the actual packet itself, which, give or take. This, we're looking at 6-to-1 because you're adding in the dairy items. And that's what I have found. Mixed fruit, this one does not actually give any rehydration. Why does this one not give rehydration? Well, honestly, because they really don't expect it to be rehydrated. They expect you to eat it directly out of the package, because that's what they know most people are going to do. It even says right here, it's the perfect crunchy snack the whole family can enjoy at any time. But these can be rehydrated. So we're going to take a look at this real quick. Because this is going to be dessert later. Now, according to the ingredients, banana, strawberry, sugar, and mulberry is the ingredients that's in here. Now, if you've ever heard me talk before, you know I cannot stand fresh banana. The texture of it just drives me nuts. I love the flavor of banana, but I cannot stand the texture of it. So I'm going to pull the banana pieces out of here. One more. And I actually have 2 packs. I just saw you right as you fell. I'll get you back in a minute. Alright, that has all the banana pieces out. So we're going to set those to the side to snack on later. Meanwhile, we're going to rehydrate these. And surprisingly enough, we're going to rehydrate these using a method Gundog actually recommended back when we were discussing the freeze-dried fruits that originally came in the brown bag MREs. And I believe it was Gundog, he can correct me if I'm wrong, that said one of the things they used to do was they would rehydrate them using the little airline bottles of alcohol. Well, I don't have an airline bottle, but it's kind of close. So we're going to rehydrate these with some honeyed bourbon, or honeyed Tennessee whiskey to be exact. It's not technically bourbon. And that's going to be my dessert later. Now this is a 100 milliliter bottle. We just used half of it, which is 50 milliliters. And that's for roughly, we're going to say, an ounce of this after I took the bananas out between the two. And we may have to end up using a little more, but this goes back into what I'm talking about. The calculation of freeze-dried foods. Through all of my studies and everything I have learned, I have found out that you can break down freeze-dried and even to the point of dehydrated foods into one of 3 categories, or one of 3 ratios. Most of your starches, your pastas, your rices, everything like that, tend to do best with a 2-to-1 ratio, which means 2 parts of water to 1 part of the actual product. Now, that's not just for freeze-dried, that is for dehydrated as well. And a perfect example is this Knorr Fiesta Sides Rice and Pasta Blend. It's 5.4 ounces. It recommends 1 3/4 cup of liquid. So that is 14 ounces of water. So you're looking at roughly 2 parts to 1 part. Well, actually that comes out more to a 3 to 1. But you've got a blending of pasta and rice and everything. Anybody that's cooked rice knows for every cup of rice you put in 2 cups of water when you're cooking it. Same thing with the potatoes we had earlier. Again, 3 ounces of liquid, or 3 ounces of potatoes, 8 ounces of liquid, a little bit more than the 1 to 2, but then you pour off the excess. So usually when you're dealing with things like oatmeal, the rice, everything like that, 2 to 1 tends to work out the best. It rehydrates it without leaving it puddled. Now when you get to your vegetable products, things like that, that's a different story. That tends to fall into the 4 to 1 ratio, which means when you're looking at 4 ounces of product, you're going to add 4 times the amount of water, 16 ounces, 2 cups. And that not only works for vegetable, but also tends to be the perfect ratio for dealing with meals. You know, meals such as this, you know, you're looking at about a 4 to 1 ratio. And if you want a perfect example of that, take a look at the meal cold weather or the meal long range patrol rations. Look at the pouches in there. They go from, you know, depending on what they are, the breakfast is different because of the weights. You know, but like the spaghetti with meat and sauce, beef stew, you're looking at 4 to 4.5 ounces of entree, and it tells you to add 16 ounces of water, 4 to 1. You know, the breakfast entrees, they actually weigh less because the eggs have so much air in them. Most of those entrees tend to only be 2 ounces. They tell you to add 8 ounces of water. Again, 4 to 1. Mountain House is pretty much standard across the board with that. With the exception of their meats, you're going to be 4 to 1, 4 to 1, 4 to 1. So, you know, 4 ounces of your entree is going to come out to a pound of food, is what it's going to end up being after you add the water and it rehydrates. And that's the thing about it. You know, dehydration, you know, again, like with this, dehydration, you're going to remove about 90 to 95% of the water. There's still going to be a little bit of moisture left in there, but not enough that it's going to go bad anytime soon. However, if it's left open, and it will absorb moisture out of the air slowly, but it will. Freeze-dried foods, they remove 99% of the water from what I understand, if not a full 100%. There is no moisture. That's why Mountain House can offer their guarantees like they do. Up until a few years ago, Mountain House guaranteed their meals for 25 years. A couple of years ago, they changed that. They changed it to a 30-year guarantee. And the way that they calculated that was they actually opened meals that had been saved for 30 years and tested them. And they came through just like fresh for the quality, for the rehydration, taste. There was absolutely no degradation from what I understand. So that's when they changed their guarantee from 25 years to 30 years. So it's not just them tossing out like most ad people saying, hey, it's good for... No, they've tested their foods and they give a 30-year guarantee on it. So I don't know anybody that has any 30-year-old Mountain House food, but if they do and they want to test it, please do and videotape it. We would like to know. Now, like I said, there's usually 3 categories when you're talking about this stuff. We've talked about the 2 to 1. We've talked about the 4 to 1. What we haven't talked about is proteins, meats. Surprisingly enough, dealing with just meat products, I have found it actually tends to be an 8 to 1 ratio. Which means for every ounce of meat product, you're going to actually add 8 ounces of water, and you're going to get back 8 ounces of meat. Now, so far that has worked out to be true. Everything I have tested, which is not much. I do plan on acquiring new items in the future just to double check that information. When I do, and if it comes out different, I will do another video. As a matter of fact, I may even try to video the testing just to have empirical evidence to back all of this up. But you know, based on what I have been able to do so far, that has been my experience. If you're dealing with oatmeals, rices, things like that. You're going to do 2 parts water to 1 part meal, and you can pretty much almost guarantee the amount of water you're adding in is what you're going to end up with in the end. So if you're adding in 8 ounces of water, you're going to end up with 8 ounces of product when you're done. And that's how you calculate your meals, your calories, everything like that. You base it off of your final weight. So in the case of, like we were talking about with the Mountain House meals in the meal cold weather and the long range patrol rations, that's 16 ounces of food you're going to be eating. That's a full pound of food, as well as your portions, your sides and everything. But as anybody who's lived in cold weather can tell you, the amount of calories you burn in the cold is so much more that you need it. And so it is something to take into serious account. Now, our reindeer stew should be about ready. Excuse me. Yeah, that smells really good. There's still a little bit of dryness here and there. As a matter of fact, I am going to add just a touch more water into this. Like I said, just a touch. And re-stir it. Just to make it an actual stew and not just a clump. So, all right. And there we go. It's got everything out. I wasn't sure if I'd need a fork or a spoon, so I grabbed both, and it may be a good thing. Alright, so there we go, our real field meal, reindeer stew. No offense to Dancer, Prancer, Donner, Blitzen, all of those fun people that Santa Claus relies on. So let's give our reindeer stew a try and see what we think. And we can see it's got a nice creamy base. We've got hunks of reindeer. Potato's good. That's what I get for not actually measuring. There we go. That loosens it up a little bit. Potato's good. I was kind of surprised. There was pictures of mushrooms, but I'm not really getting mushroom flavor in this. And actually, it does have a really unique flavor, though. It's a little bit of natural gaminess, like you find with regular venison. Okay, that one had some of the lingonberry in it, a little bit of mild sweetness in the middle of it. It's good. I like it. The only thing it could use would maybe be a touch of Tabasco. But I got some of that in the kitchen. I might go grab it here in a minute. But, yeah. In honor of Christmas, I'm having reindeer stew and a nice discussion about freeze-dried and dehydrated foods. And I even have some macerated berries for dessert later. So, I'm going to go ahead and get to eating, folks. But I want to take the time to wish everyone a happy Christmas. wonderful new year, health and prosperity, and plenty of good foods. Y'all have a good.
Hallelujah, everybody say cheese. Merry Christmas from the family.